So how
hi, I'm Ella, and I help women really connect with their sexuality and get confident in their lives, because as we just experienced, that center needs to be flowing through us on a regular basis for us to really be in our power, which I find is sweetness, right? The center in Sanskrit is Svadhisthana, which is the sweetness. First, I just want to take a moment today to share with you how grateful I am to stand here. This is my first time speaking as Ella, go ask Ella, as the advice, as the coach that I'm stepping into the role of being. And I feel really honored to do that with all of you. And to shake it out. How fun is that to just shake it out? I wasn't concerned. I was just like, yeah, I'm letting it go. Letting it flow. So it was a year ago yesterday, I was reminded that today was the equinox, that I stood on top of Machu Picchu. And I asked to come into the power of my purpose in my life. And I really, really wanted to work with women. And I didn't know how it was going to come together. And I think it's really perfect that it didn't even occur to me until I walked in this morning that it's exactly a year ago to the day. And I'm doing that. Yeah, so I'm not sure if any of you were experiencing, when Tarni was talking about the center, the uterus, the vagina, a lot of people go when we mention those words. And physically, we kind of shrink into the little clams that we are, and we hide our pearls, right? And we are, we're pearls. And what does that do for us? We're disconnected, right? How often do you find that the only time you're paying attention to that region of your uterus or your vagina is when there's a problem with it, or you're menstruating, or when there's something inside there, right? And yet, it's there all the time. We don't acknowledge it unless there's something wrong. And I feel like that's how a lot of women approach their bodies. It's like, we don't really pay attention to anything until there's something wrong. Oh, not empowering at all, right? And for a lot of us, we don't want to appear that we don't have it together. And we certainly don't want anybody to know that we don't know, that we don't know, that we don't. So, what I want to share with you today is why I do what I do. And it started a long time ago in a land far away, actually just in Northern California, where my British grandmother came to visit me when I was 16 years old. And I had a very beautiful relationship with my mother. She was my mother, and I didn't really want to talk to her about the fact that I was contemplating having sex with my boyfriend for the first time, because I didn't want her to snoop around and try and be around the house more, right? And I also just kind of, well, I just felt a little uncomfortable. And I didn't want to talk to my girlfriends because I didn't want them to know that I wasn't experienced. I was 16, I'd never seen a penis, and I was absolutely terrified that I was going to get into the situation with my boyfriend and he was going to find out that I wasn't perfect, that I wasn't beautiful, that I certainly wasn't sexy, and that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I did not want that to happen. So luckily, the universe sent my grandmother to me. And we were sitting in the back seat of my mother's car, driving to San Francisco, and she turns to me and says, and she's British, which makes it all that much more perfect, she says, you know, darling, you should learn how to bob on the knob so that you can keep him round, keep him happy, and keep yourself happy. Really, it's quite simple. My mom's eyes are bugging out of her head. She's looking in the rearview mirror, don't you dare, don't you dare. And I was like, oh, really? So, bobbing on the knob, for those of you who can't put it together for the moment, fellatio, a little bit of oral sex on a penis, which I hadn't seen yet. And the way she approached me with it was so fun, and so nonchalant and non-judgmental. It was just, this is how it is. This is how it is. And it just deflated this huge piece for me of, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared. I don't know. And from that day forward, I just found that the more I had that conversation, the more fun I had in all areas of my life, because who doesn't want to talk about sex? I find, you know, it's a great party starter conversation. So I really wanted to create that experience for you of sharing and just letting it be, because I think it's really crucial for us to understand that about ourselves, and by revealing it. Did a lot of you experience feeling similar to the person you were talking to and relating to them, right? Just a little bit. Okay, so I used to teach sex ed throughout Los Angeles Unified School District. And I taught 9th grade boys and girls. And I never allowed them to do this exercise. But what I did have after every single talk that I did was, oh my God, I didn't know who to ask. I don't have an askable adult. I don't know anybody who has trustworthy, non-judgmental information, right? I didn't have a place to go. And it just became more and more clear to me that we don't have these conversations with our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our friends, because we're intimidated by the word vagina, or we're intimidated by the fact that we may not know, and we don't want anybody to figure that out, right? So did anybody have a moment that they just really felt they had an aha in this experience? What was your name?
Lauren.
Lauren, would you mind coming up and holding the mic so everybody?
Really?
Yeah. All I was going to say is that my experience was, or you want me to just say my aha?
Sure.
So the aha is that I actually had a very open conversation with my mom when I was, I don't know, like 8 or 10 or what have you. It was not a scary thing. But the aha was that my mom was always very traditional and pristine and appropriate and kind of perfect from my standpoint. So I just realized when I was talking to Kathleen that when my approach in terms of as I got older, when I finally had sex for the first time, you know, where my boundaries were in my head and my thought processes about what was appropriate or not appropriate and behaving a certain way, I never knew where that came from until just now. I was sitting here saying, you know, when my mom explained all this to me and it was all really open and I was always able to talk to her, but it was never a taboo in my faith or my growing up, so I didn't know where my thought processes came until just now because of my mom's very traditional, pristine, appropriate way, and it took me a while to have to break out of that. And I just realized where it came from, so thank you.
Can we give a pause for sharing that? So I just really want to honor all of you for taking that moment to share yourself. Because that's where the healing begins, and that's where the connection begins, right? And my goal in my life is to create that bridge for sisters and mothers and daughters, whether they have one at hand or not, that we can be that for each other. And so I'd like to leave you with one special, very juicy treat that I talked with Sierra about. I said, you know, this might be really inappropriate. And I was like, wait a second. What is it that I do again? All right. So if anybody's gonna step up, it's gotta be me.